Hello, my name is Vadmand Jensen. I'm a master's student in IT design and application development at Aalborg University. And together with Rikke Hagensby Jensen, assistant professor at Aalborg University, I wrote this paper called Exploring Values of Energy Justice, a case study of a burgeoning energy community. Recently, research has engaged with developing digital platforms that can support the production and consumption of local renewable energy in energy communities. However, much of this research has been described as assuming a fair and equal energy transition, i.e. that by implementing these systems, everybody will have equal access to the right types of energy. In this paper, we provide a case study of a burgeoning energy community, one that's recently been founded. This provided us a unique opportunity to follow the development of this citizen-driven energy community and to understand what they hope the energy community in the end can provide its citizens. Our aim with this is to operationalize energy justice into a set of empirical practices and to provide a set of empirical practices that can help us understand how we provide these fair and equal energy transitions. We work with the case of Energifællesskab Avedøre, or EFA for short. EFA is a Danish cooperative that was established in 2020, and here every participant gets a single vote. It's burgeoning and they're still in development. For example, they're still figuring out which technologies to implement. The municipality around EFA has a prior engagement with renewable energy technology. As you can see behind me, an apartment complex utilizing solar cells is one example. Currently, EFA has implemented solar cells as well as electric vehicle charging at the local high school. There are a number of partners in EFA, including public institutions like the local high school, private citizens, as well as private companies. You can see one interior picture from a private company in EFA behind me. We were engaged in a project that included both researchers, a software development firm, and a consulting firm. And this project was concerned with developing digital energy platforms for the energy community. And specifically, we were engaged to provide human-centered insights on these platforms that were relevant for the continued development of EFA. In our study, we utilized value-sensitive design, or VSD, to understand which values that we should embed in the design of energy community systems. In our conceptual investigation, we looked into which values were relevant to implement. We used desk research here. We read a number of academic articles on conceptual, empirical, and designerly perspectives on community energy and coded values they described as relevant in vivo. In our empirical investigation, we were interested in understanding which empirical practices can support these values. Here, we utilized interviews with 10 diverse stakeholders in EFA, 3 news articles, as well as field visits as our data material. We conducted an inductive thematic analysis of this data material over multiple rounds, finally connecting the developed themes to the values, seeing the themes as empirical manifestations of these values. We categorized these values into 3 tenets of energy justice based on the practices that underline these. Distributional justice concerns how we might distribute the benefits and the threats of the energy community. Procedural justice concerns how we might support participation in the energy community. And recognition justice concerns how we can recognize the diversity of views and histories in the energy community. Thus, we utilize energy justice as a lens to understand how we might promote fairness in energy transitions, like the energy community. This is the ethical framework that we developed as part of our study. Every box describes a value, and every value in a black box describes a value that can come into conflict with other values in other black boxes, where we have to prioritize one value over another. I like to focus on procedural justice, which you can see outlined here in the blue square. The first value we identified was that of data transparency. And conceptually, this was concerned with providing energy data that's easy to understand for its users. The empirical investigation showed how this is connected to procedural justice. For example, with Lena, a project worker, describing how that if citizens are to act and participate in the energy community, well, then they should be able to understand the systems. It should be translated into something understandable. And thus, energy community systems should provide energy data and in general data that's understandable for the different types of stakeholders that might utilize the data in different situations. Another value that was relevant for procedural justice was competencies. Competencies was conceptually concerned with how we can provide education and build competencies among citizens to enable them to act sustainably. Empirically, the citizen Nicole describes how you might promote competencies by helping students absorb some knowledge to you. The public institution employee Tara describes how her job is in part shaped by her wish to engage students in acting in the energy community and in general in acting more sustainably and helping them do this. Further, the local high school uses the implemented solar cells as a way to attract students who value sustainability. And thus, competencies becomes a way of helping people and citizens in the energy community to act in a way that makes sense within the energy community. And thus, we have to build energy community systems that support these practices. For example, practices of teaching, utilizing the energy community. The value of routinization was concerned in our conceptual investigation with providing digital energy platforms that can easily be integrated into people's lives. Empirically, the citizen James describes how when EVA is fully developed, it might be easier to get people to choose the electric vehicles that might be relevant because they wouldn't have to provide the entire energy infrastructure themselves. And thus, it would be a lot easier to participate in the procedures of EVA. Thus, our energy community systems can promote procedural justice by limiting the technological change required of their users. The final value we identified for procedural justice is that of collaboration, which conceptually was concerned with how the grid could cooperate and collaborate with those citizens who produce energy. Empirically, the project worker Elliot describes how it could be relevant for EFA to collaborate with the national energy grid in Denmark, for example, by producing energy for this grid. And we also saw how it's relevant to collaborate internally in the energy community. For example, in the picture behind me, you see how the local high school and an energy consulting firm are working together in the same building. And thus, collaboration becomes concerned with how we actually act and collaborate in the energy community. This also entails a value tension, because we identified another value called communal culture, which is concerned with how we might distribute that feeling of being a part of the energy community and do this based on local shared values. But if we are to collaborate with people outside the energy community, be it the national grid or other companies, they might not share our values, and thus we might have to compromise that communal culture as a value. Our study has a number of implications. We've identified value tensions that have implications for how we achieve energy justice. We've identified these early, before they've stabilized, and before EFA has found ways to manage these. Thus, we can now start to identify empirically the appropriate local trade-offs that might exist between different values and provide these to EFA. We've also identified values as situated conceptions of energy justice. And in doing so, we've developed a values hierarchy that can help us design for energy justice, moving from energy justice tenets to values to empirical practices. Now it's time to conduct technical investigations that can help us figure out which design requirements can help us enact energy justice. And one example of this could be that procedural justice, as you can see here, is supported by competencies. And we can enact competencies as a value by teaching students utilizing the energy community. And in doing this, we might have to design systems that provide energy data access to teachers and educators. To summarize, we've identified 10 values of an energy community, and we've connected these to distributional, procedural, and recognition justice tenets. We've discussed how value tensions come to affect tenets of energy justice, and we've developed an ethical framework of energy justice that can help us design within energy communities for just energy futures. Thank you.